back in France.
Oh, maybe that's a good one. All right, we are live. Let me play the music. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 40k Fireside podcast. I'm David Gaylord, and I'm joined by my good friend Vic Vijay. Together, we discuss 40k and the meta from our perspective, along with events we've recently been to and those that have got coming up. So come on down to the fireside and listen. Alrighty, welcome to what I think is something like episode 57 or something like that, and welcome to 10.5 edition, 10.5 edition 10.5 or something like that. Because as I'm sure you're aware, if you're a listener and you're a competitive watcher, there has been a huge update to the game today. A sweeping array of changes across. I feel like all factions got changed. They even remembered to change Deathwatch. So that's just how deep these changes go.
I mean, did they change it really?
Yeah, well, yeah. I think Watch Captain Artemis went down 10 points. But look, a longtime friend of mine, Clement, is joining me today. It's a pleasure to have you on, Clement. Clement has been a player in the UK scene for how many years now? I think you started well before me, right?
Yeah, I started back in third edition, so even
Right.
before moving to UK.
Yeah.
But I've been in London for now 11 years, and I've been playing on and off competitive for decades.
Yes.
And I think I've been a bit more proactive in the last 5 years, probably.
Yeah. Clement,
Yeah.
you are one of those players that if you actually played as much as I did or another person, I have no doubt that you would be one of the top players. Really good at the game, but classically you are a Space Marines player, right? And I guess a bit of Eldari.
Yeah, I've got basically three main factions: Space Marines / Space Wolves. Most of the time, Space Wolves, because I'm kind of like a fluff puppy. And Eldars are like my two main factions. Some people may have seen me playing World Eaters, but that was a very long time ago.
Short-lived affair. All right, let's jump into it. Man. This is a monster one. I think the gist of this update, as I understand it, is that Games Workshop kind of marks this as the start of their new season.
Mm.
So every year they have a season, like whatever, and this marks the beginning of the new season. So we're always going to have a huge update in June or just before WTC, basically, which is obviously the thing that overpins all of this updates, right? Is that we have WTC around the corner, the largest and most competitive event in the world, where all teams basically go radio silence and everyone tries to cook the best ideas. So that's it's exciting that we've got a big change, but I know a lot of teams are also really under the pump to adjust players, adjust factions, and stuff like that too, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it comes with, as we've seen, with the mission packs as well. So we've got
Yeah.
the missions, so primary, secondary, and all of that have been revamped. And now we've got a complete rework of the core rules, some key factions, mechanism, points, etc., and two new codex at the same. It's a lot in a month.
It's basically a
Um,
new edition, right? Like,
yeah, yeah, it's
it's an absolute
10.5, as
massive
you
change.
said. Yeah.
You can fast roll now.
I know.
Officially fast roll. That makes command point reroll about 40% better, in my opinion.
It does, but it makes life a lot easier.
Yeah, I
You're
agree.
not like, oh, I still have 3 dice to roll on a 4+. Should I CP reroll it or not? No, just roll it and see.
There you go. So we spoiled one of the changes. Obviously, there's like a ton of content, guys, that have touched everything. So we're going to go through some of the highlights. Otherwise, this is going to be literally like a 4-hour episode. First up, Vect. Now it's an aura. So
Yep.
instead of targeting a battle tactic, you now, each time your opponent targets a unit from the army with a stratagem, if that unit is within 12 inches of that model, increase the cost of that stratagem by 1 CP.
Yep.
Now, I'm not really sure when you have to do that. If it's a 1 CP and they only have 1 CP, do you spend 1 and then it goes to 2, or it just becomes
I think
flat 2?
it's flat up upgrades or updates all the cost of stratagems for units affected by that aura by 1.
Yeah.
So if, for example, you want to armor of contempt a unit within that aura, instead of being 1 CP, it will be 2 CP. Or if you use your captain for 0 CP, which still work, spoiling a bit, instead of being 0 CP, it goes back to 1. But that stack with any strat that you're going to use, I've found it extremely interesting in terms of changes, especially with the dynamic of the different characters that we've seen a lot being using this kind of aura. So, yeah.
I think when I first read this, I thought that's a massive nerf. But
Yeah.
actually, when you think about the combat armies, actually,
Hmm.
it's 12 inches is a pretty big aura. Actually,
Yep.
so you YOLO someone in, and then you know you're going to fight, and then if they've got a key stratagem or something like that, then you can actually protect yourself a lot. You know
Fight
what
on
is
death.
big.
Yeah,
Fight on
fight
death
on
is
death.
big. Interrupt
Interrupt.
is also big.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah, it's quite
fight on
good.
death is either 1 or 2 CP, depending whether it's automatic or on a dice roll. If it's automatic, which is one of the most powerful, it becomes 3 CP.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
So I think actually some of the key players will actually use this in a team's environment specifically. If you're playing combat versus combat, I actually think this is a real powerhouse.
yeah,
So a good change overall for the game, I think. It's a really interesting change for the game because another spoiler alert, heroic intervention is 1 CP. So
yeah,
if you're within 12 with your one guy, they can't heroic, right? Because you do it after
exactly.
you charge and then you get into
Yeah,
range and they can't heroic. So 12 inches is pretty big, man.
yeah.
It's pretty good.
And certain factions were able to stack them in the old
Ah, okay.
writing. Now it doesn't really impact anymore to have it free time on the
Yep.
same stratagem, but you can have it on multiple places on the board, which may just shut down not just one side that you're attacking heavily, but it may shut down in 2 different places, so enable you to activate maybe 3 units or 2 units safely before the third one might be
Yeah.
interrupted.
Yeah, you can imagine if you're playing Space Wolves or something like that and you've got a Vector or whatever, right? Like, yeah,
Hmm.
you want to have this,
Yeah.
It's like straight
Oh,
up value.
absolutely.
Your opponent can't interrupt and then use a full rerolls or something like that or whatever,
Yep.
right? Yeah, really cool. All right, we actually skipped past one of the largest changes as well, of course, the very top one, which is this is a big change. Is that if any ability where you have to would otherwise be a free stratagem, you can no longer use that a second time, like most of
Mm.
them say. But
Yep.
instead of giving it for free, also it just reduces it by 1 CP. So
Yep.
now it does apply to all stratagems, though. So a lot of
Correct.
1 CP strats become 0, a lot of 2 become 1, but you can't double them up. So Tyranids, for example, where you want to double Feel No Pain, or double Armor of Contempt. What's the classic battle tactic with Chaos Space
Um,
Marines? 4 rerolls to Profane Zeal,
Yeah,
etc.
yeah,
etc.
Profane Zeal or anything similar that they have in Renegade Raider. There's a couple of good
Mm.
strats there. Um, I mean, we've seen it being used quite widely, unless it
Hmm.
is a name strat in the ability, which almost never exists anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, what are your? I mean, for me, obviously, I thought of this and I thought guard is a huge nerf to them
Hmm.
because Ursula Creed you can no longer Fields of Fire for free, which is a
Yep.
big nerf there. But then I thought, there's some armies that actually, spoiler alert, benefit from this. So it's kind of interesting because some armies is
It,
actually better for. So
yep.
if you think of Thousand Suns, for example,
Hmm.
they have a 6 Cabal ability where you can
Yep.
use a strat for free. Well,
Yep.
I'll tell you right now, guys, for 12 Cabal and a Lord of Forbidden Law, you can indirect on turn 1 with full rerolls. Because you
Hmm.
can free strat twice, and the second time with your unit of Forbidden Law, and then you can 1 CP from the 2 CP to 1 discount. You can indirect
Yep.
someone with full rerolls despite hitting on 4 with Magnus on turn 1. So
Yep.
it's pretty and Thousand Suns is really
It's
good. Overwatch
yeah,
someone for whatever.
0 CP.
Yeah, it's. I mean,
It's-
some armies it's really good, right?
Exactly. It's kind of a side grade where some armies were able to abuse it really because they had amazing battle tactic
Mm-hmm.
and they had captains and the like, etc., that they could use.
Mm-hmm.
Now that changed completely that build design and consideration that everyone has, which is what are my strats that are battle tactic, and do I have the right unit to leverage them and spam them? So I was playing 2 captains, for example, for
Mm-hmm.
double armor of contempt and double 1 +1 to wound and +1 AP and so on, etc. Well, can't do that anymore, but I can
Mm.
do more things with it. So heroic for 0 CP,
Yep, huge. Yeah. By the
which
way,
is quite
spoiler alert,
nice.
guys. Obviously, heroic went from 2 to 1, which is big
Which is
change.
yeah,
Big change. Yeah. Yeah. It's a really interesting change. I'm not sure if it's better or worse. It certainly does make
it's
it
a
a lot less casino-y, whether or not
yeah,
you got the good battle tactic. Which
yeah.
was pretty important. I feel like.
I think it opens more the player skills to be able to leverage it rather than do I have a good codex?
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, 100% agree. So two cool changes all around, and these two changes obviously kind of work within each other, right?
Yep.
So yeah, cool. I really like these changes. If not, do I like them for the game being better? I probably do actually. Yeah, I think this makes a better game. I think as well. Stratagems that can be used more than once in the same phase. Let's just skip that.
Yep.
Okay, so generic
Big
lone op
change.
is now
Yeah.
18 inches,
Yeah,
which
strats you that gives you loan up.
Oh, strats that give you loan up. Yeah, of
Yeah,
course. Come on. This has been a pretty big trademark nerf across any army that has previously had the 12-inch nerf loan
yep,
up, right? Chaos Space Marines Nurgle strat, I think, being the most obvious one there.
correct.
That going from 12 to 18 was a pretty big nerf. It suddenly meant that your units that could otherwise untarget, not target their Rhino, basically can get in range. So a pretty big change here. This is affecting, I guess, Necron's Canoptic
Necrons.
Court,
Yep,
Genestealer Cult, which not isn't a huge one. Are they
Tyranids,
untargetable? Yeah, Tyranids is another one.
which
Um,
have now a very odd scenario where it goes 18 or 6 rather than 12 and 6. So it's quite interesting.
yeah, yeah. It's obviously one of those changes that hits everyone differently, but all in all, 12-inch
I think
on-demand
it's
loan op
good.
is pretty.
Yeah,
It's pretty brutal to play against, and it really does open up a lot of strategies for your opponent
correct.
with the army that they're playing. Right, so 12 inches is just at such a close gap, especially when you combine it with infantry units, right?
Yep.
That you can charge outside of, for example. It's that makes the
It,
gap super close,
yeah.
basically.
Or infantry units that you can redeploy. So GSC can't do it anymore, but we've got AdMech, for example, that has that capability to loan up and
Yeah.
redeploy with, for example, the Flamer guys
Mm,
and any other kind of similar units like that.
yeah. So I think again another good change to the game.
Yeah,
I think it's
yeah.
just the way that the game that we're playing right now. That's good. Like I can see a different version of the game playing with 12 inches would be more appropriate, right?
Mhm.
All right, this next one is
I think it's for you,
yeah,
just for you.
this is this is a bit of a brutal one. I think to summarize, basic. Oh, so anyway, you can only respawn units once per game. So any
Yeah,
stratagem that basically had you could add another unit identical to this one can basically only be used once per game. So this hits Endless Swarm. It hits. There's another one. I guess GS. No, doesn't it GSC? But
no.
obviously it hits Guard as
Yeah.
well. So those are the two big offenders there. Although I'm not really sure if they were big offenders in the meta, if I'm being honest. But
I
yeah.
think, yeah, Tyranids was an edge case where
Mm.
you see it a bit or not. Guard was living and breathing by that mechanism and made
Mhm.
the faction operate on a different level.
Yeah. Yeah, different level being the 47% win rate level. But yeah, obviously, I can understand it from both perspectives though, because obviously, if your opponent is respawning units, it's hard to keep track of them. It makes units difficult to cost. So a
Yep,
Kaskin 120, are they 100? A Gargoyles 90, are they 80? Or whatever, right?
yep,
It's really difficult because that stratagem fundamentally just breaks things. It doesn't
yep,
actually. They could be 50% more. You could still argue to play them, which is unlike most things in the game, right? Where
yep,
your points become a linear argument of, well, do I play them? Do
correct.
I not? The
Yep.
respawn stratagem really just gets around a lot of that.
You really have a decision then. Do I want to respawn that unit, yes or no, rather than
Yeah,
let me just press that button every turn.
yeah. It's more of
And
a
as
build round.
exactly
Yeah,
as the opponent as well, you don't have that impression of playing against someone who has 2,800 points,
yeah,
as we had, for example, at the beginning of GSC, where they had just unlimited army, like
yeah.
they never died. So
No, they didn't. They literally never died. Oh god, the beginning of 10th edition GSC was not fun to play against. Yeah, so a big
I think
it's another good example of
it's
armies get hit differently depending on
yeah,
the game wide rules that get changed there as well, right?
yeah, yeah, and hopefully they factor that in with the point evaluation of the armies that are relying on more on this mechanism to be
Yeah,
competitive and viable. But I think it's good in a way. It kind of echo back to also the move from 7th to 8th edition where you had unlimited spawning of demons, etc. So you played against 3,500 points in a
yeah, yeah.
2,000 game. You're like,
Yeah,
what the heck?
yeah, that concept. I would have liked to have seen one faction kind of retain that ability because I think it's a unique one. It's an
Yeah,
interesting
but
design space, right?
it is, but it's so hard to balance, I would
Yeah, I
say.
agree. Yeah, 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 I agree. All right, sisters, no changes, but obviously with the new codex, they are receiving the majority of their changes in points values, which, spoiler alert, are quite heavy. Anyway, Adeptus Custodes. You know anything about Custodes, Clement?
So very, very minor
Hmm.
knowledge, especially that they're quite well, they're not that recent anymore, but I haven't seen them in action a lot. I
Hmm.
knew they were quite boxed in with only one of the detachments being viable,
Yep.
which is the one that included the reactive move. That was a battle tactic, so that was quite good. But yeah, they felt like a bit lackluster compared to
Yeah.
what they had before.
Yeah,
Um,
so I think they do receive two buffs here.
mm,
One is that you do select at the start of the battle round, bullet points below, etc., but it affects a character unit, I think, instead of a character. But spoiler alert, custodies receive some good points decreases across the
yeah.
board, which is good because they certainly need it, I think.
Yeah, and then on units that were not necessarily heavily seen, so they
Hmm.
kept what they have today and open up a bit more options and viability with other units, which is quite nice.
For sure, for sure. So the faction probably receiving the largest array of changes,
Yeah,
Adeptus Mechanicus, which has been a bit of a long time coming, hasn't it? It's
yeah.
kind of surprising to me actually that they received this wide range of changes, mainly because I think you could argue that other factions could be like this as well, right? But
Mm.
they just never seem to really hit the mark with Adeptus Mechanicus, in my opinion, right? I don't know if they don't understand the design space. I don't understand the design space from a thematic perspective, right? I don't understand what
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 they're
their faction
doing.
identity is really. Is it
Mm.
just tanks and guys? Um, that's kind of what it feels like to me, at least at the moment.
Yeah, and the faction is separated into like two sub-faction as well for a very
Yeah.
long period of time. That also, I think, impacted what they really want to do, trying to streamline a bit the rules when they move from 9 to 10.
Hmm.
But at the same time, they also hurt a lot certain of their damage dealers and fast-moving units by removing certain interactions.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels like they are trying to close the gap here.
Mm.
I'd
So
make yeah.
I was going to say, so if we go through them, the so I roughly know a little bit about the doctrines and whatnot like that.
Mm,
Plus one ballistic skill, and it used to also be plus one save in the protector doctrina, and then the conqueror doctrina was assault and plus one AP, if I'm not correct. So
yep,
it was heavy and plus one save while you're
yep,
in deployment zone, and then the other one was assault and plus one AP.
correct.
These seem like a bit of a side grade, really. You get plus one ballistic skill, which is
Yep,
obviously good, makes you a BS3 army, so a lot more
yep.
reliable. And then you get minus one to hit in combat, which, given how prevalent combat is in the meta right now, is not a that's not a small thing, right? You still get heavy, but I mean that's not a heavy's not really fantastic. Let's be honest, right?
Well, I think with cert, it's not necessarily that is true. Especially that they're an army that relies at the moment a lot on units that disembark from transport, etc. So how often are they going to really be able to leverage that heavy?
Hmm.
Um, Maybe with some rapid ingress play with the breaches, for example, etc. But at the moment, their main bread and butter is infantry in the transports, working out, reroll to hit, reroll to wounds.
Yeah.
The plus one ballistic skills is going to be quite tremendous for them
Hmm.
because suddenly their damage becomes a lot higher, more
Hmm.
reliable.
Yep.
Um, and they are slightly more resilient, not a lot, because they're
Yeah, in
still
combat, I suppose.
T3 bodies.
Mm.
So
Yeah, I mean, obviously, losing plus one save is quite large. The Conqueror imperative now gives you plus one weapon skill and
mm,
gives you plus one AP whenever you make an attack as well. So
yeah,
it's both melee and ranged, which is nice. It's good,
which is
but
great.
at the cost of what plus one ballistic skill, that's a pretty big toss up, right? I kind of wonder whether or not you just wouldn't sit in Protector Imperative the whole game
Mm,
because plus one BS, and I guess it depends on your list, but plus one ballistic skill and minus one to hit in combat is pretty tremendous to me. Maybe turn one assault. It depends on, I guess, how much melee you've really got on your list. I can obviously
mm,
see, plus one weapon skill means your Sicarian infiltrators and Rust Stalkers, Electro Priest perhaps or something like that can hit on twos now.
yep,
And they get plus one AP. So depending on how much melee I guess you got in your army, I guess it does kind of turn into a phase army, doesn't it? Where you have early protector imperative,
yep,
then you can shift into conqueror imperative to
yep,
activate the other half of your melee army, perhaps, which is
yep.
kind of nice.
yeah, towards the mid of a game where we know turn 2, turn 3 are going to be more brawling
Yeah.
stages of a game. That's the moment where you want to switch that gear. You will be able to leverage your priest and all the different Skitarii units that are good in combat. And that stack as well with what they've done to the data sheets themselves.
Yes. So basically everything, I think everything now gets the protector doctriners, right?
Yep.
So Electro Priest, etc., which is cool. So basically, as I understand it, your whole army gets it now. So previously these were the God, I used to play Admic as well. I can't remember. It'll come to me later on, but the different sub court
Yep.
of Admic here, with the Dominus and whatnot like that, and the Electro Priest. Now you get it for your whole army, which is a nice buff. So Electro Priest being the kind of buff there, I guess, right?
Hmm.
Belisarius Call also gets it as well, which is nice.
It's good.
It certainly helps. Belisarius Call also got a big buff as well. I think he got +2 to move, which is nice.
Yep.
And then he gets the battle line keyword, which is, I mean, I'm
Quite
assuming
surprising.
that's really good.
Yeah.
Because a lot of your stuff triggers off being within 6 inches of a battle
Seems
line unit. So,
correct.
okay, that's awesome. And he now gets a new aura as well. So basically, this aura gives you +1 to your leadership tests, like basically everyone has. So, yeah, I
Which
guess
makes
getting
them widely leadership 6, right? Which is not a bad place to be in.
leadership 6 is good.
Yeah,
Gaining battle line and +2 to move is definitely
quite nice.
something. And obviously, comboing with the fact that it synergizes with your whole army with the Doctriners now.
Yep.
So it seems like they're really trying to push him because Belisarius Call has been garbage for a long time. Oh my god, I've had him painted for like 3 years. He's been so
I
bad.
can't remember the last time I saw him on a board.
I think it was when we played at Rogue's Quarter, actually, like years ago.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah, cool to see him as a centerpiece coming back into the game. Hopefully,
Yep.
I really like him. He's a cool model as well. Thematic, really cool as well.
Yep.
Now, the guns, right? This is the first time I think we've really seen a sweeping change of guns as well. Now, I don't know the minutiae detail of all these things, but Iron Strider Ballistari basically got double the number of attacks
Yep.
and lost Twin Linked, which
Correct.
overall is a pretty substantial buff. They also got Sustained 1. So instead of Twin Linked, they get Sustained 1, and they get double the number of attacks. So on Las Cannon that you don't really need Twin Linked, having double the shots and Sustained 1 now actually makes them
Yeah. I,
a viable unit, I think.
I have a memory that they had sustain 1 before, but I
Did
might
they?
be wrong. I might be wrong. So
Oh, you're
don't.
right.
Um,
I mean,
but
that would
I
make sense, right? If they get double number of attacks, but they lose Twin Linked. So
but I
it's not
agree.
really great.
If we'll look at it, a squad of 6 ballistary, 3 ballistary will turn from 3 shots to 6 shots. That's tremendous.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, it's a
Twin
lot more
Linked,
reliable to kill something, that's for sure, right?
yep. They
Let me
actually
just look
do
up.
damage.
Where's the Balor? Sorry, there we go, right here. It's gonna fact check this one. Yeah, you're right. They did have sustained ones. Okay, cool. I mean, obviously you got twice as much chance to get a 6, right? So
Yep.
it's always nice.
Well,
The
on average,
autocannons,
yeah, on
autocannons an
average you will
interesting
have
profile
one.
there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
On average, you will have at least one.
Yeah. Disintegrator. I'm assuming the Ferromite cannon used to be flat 3. I think off the top of my head, it was flat 3 for a long time.
Yeah.
Now going to D6+1. That's always
Yep.
nice.
Yep.
Okay.
That's quite good.
I guess actually D6+1's kind of nice on it now. The Ferromite cannon was basically awful for a long time because obviously it had the Belarus energy cannon, which was the indirect profile.
Yep. Which the indirect was quite good anyway. The Scorpius is a very chunky piece to remove because it's a lot of wounds. It's a 2-up armor save, and it has a lot of shots outside of the main gun as well. So
wow, it does have a 2-up save. What the?
yep, yep.
Oh, wow, okay, that's not a bad Lehman Russ right there. 3 shots, and it's got a whole lot of auxiliary guns as well, of course.
Yep.
Now, infiltrators, Ruststalkers, broadly speaking, got better, which
Yep.
I guess with your Conqueror Imperative actually makes them a lot better now. You could go with the Transonic Blades and Claw. You could go from 5 -3 1 hitting on 3s, I suppose. Oh, I just forgot that they were weapon skill 4. Yeah, I thought they were weapon skill 3, of course. Going hitting on 2s, but I mean, at least you're not 3s now. I mean, that's the classic thing for
Yep.
Admic, isn't it? Yeah,
Yep.
it's a 4. The Dooncrawler, I don't know what the existing gun was, but I'm just going to assuming it got 50% better or something like that. In that rough.
I think that would be a fair statement. I have no idea either.
I mean, depending on the points, Doomcrawl is not bad. I mean, a lot of this stuff just depends on the points, right? Because we're literally just talking about how much damage it does,
Yeah.
and then it's not getting new maneuverability or something like that.
Yeah, and
Although,
I think we should see quite a tremendous change in the points for AdMech, which have been very, very low costed because their June damage was not reliable or very low output because everything was at best AP2.
yeah,
Now we see an increase in AP, we see an increase in reliability of the damage, an increase of the damage capability. So we should see a bit of a shift there in terms of what would be those key centerpiece in terms of
yeah.
cost.
I think it's fair to say AdMech, their only viable playstyle really at the moment is
Is
just having so much
it's a
stuff.
horde. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just a
okay.
horde. Yeah, a
Yep.
way of dice, which is yeah.
Very nice. Okay, I think Eldari is more or less unchanged.
Yep.
Yes, I think it's completely
Don't.
unchanged.
Yep. No
I'm just going to put
changes.
it out there. I wish they would put only the new stuff in red. Maybe that's me.
Yes, I agree. I was also stricken by all the reds and was like, oh, actually, that's all new.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure this was 66. Of course. Agents of the Imperium. We're going to skip. I guess let's go on to the guard stuff.
Yep.
Um, okay, good. This is a change that we used to have basically, which was that when an officer disembarked, we could issue an order. Now that actually does currently work because when you are set up on the battlefield, you can issue an order. So now officer models can issue orders in your command phase and at the end of a phase in which they disembark from a transport or were set up on the battlefield. So, I mean, slightly different, I suppose, because you could disembark, move, and then order somewhere else at the end of your movement phase. At the end of a phase. So, I mean, it's pretty minor, I think. I think, if
It,
anything, it's morally just clarification, really. But
yeah.
it's a minor buff, I think, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and even if it does that, it gives a bit more flexibility as to where you can throw your orders.
Yep. Yeah.
So that removes a bit the necessity to always have a command squad to increase revenge, for example. So you can
Yep.
try to have that design space and play with it in terms of do I want to be a bit more static and not, etc., which is quite
Yeah.
nice.
I think Iron Hand Straken is probably the one that this is going to affect the most if you do
Yep.
play him. Jumping out of a Chimera, order something, move, order something else, at the end of your movement phase, etc.
Yep.
I think it means that you could disembark from a transport and you could order at the end of your movement phase, which could then hit a unit that had come in from Deep Strike.
Correct.
Potentially, I guess.
Yep.
It's
Because
movement
it will
phase.
be at the end of a phase. Yep.
Yeah. All right, guard received I think this is arguably a side grade. I think mainly because the old playstyle of indirect received such a heavy nerf that
Yep.
the old list would not want this detachment rule because it doesn't synergize well with your indirect, for example.
Yep.
But the newer list where indirect has gotten severely hit, this is better. So basically, your regiment units get lethal against non-vehicle, non-monster. Your squadron, which is your vehicles, of course, get lethals against vehicles and monsters. So,
Yep.
it's a nice change. It means that your Russes are going to kill other vehicles and Russes nicer. It means that, for example, your Kaskin or something like that have lethal hits with their las guns, or same with your Katachan or just a normal infantry squad. So it means
Yep.
killing other infantry is a little
Yep.
bit easier with your las pistols.
Yeah, science becomes quite interesting.
Yep.
So science with command squads, they drop, they order themselves, they get sustain, they get full reroll, and they get lethal. That's thought to be quite interesting as a punch that you pack.
Yep, for sure.
I like
The
as well that it gives a different design and intent on the guard, which is not anymore sit where I am and try to shoot you out of a
Yep.
board and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's kind of nice that they split these squadron and regiment out. I
Yep.
think they should focus on that more actually in the book. I think that's the way to go.
Yeah.
And Sentinels obviously receive both of these, so
Yep, there will be some edge cases where you get both, which is quite nice as well.
yeah,
A bit
it's fair.
confusing, but nice.
Yeah, Sentinels have always been like a tank dude in them sort of thing.
Yep.
But they're still pretty bad. Probably not using those. Black Templars, righty ho. Okay, there is a little bit of a change in here in the Impulsor command. Do you want to talk
Yep.
about
Yeah, so impulsors have been quite famously just only 6 models, so Tacticus or Phobos, which in some cases is fine. So a captain with assault intercessors or 5 but plasma guys that can be with a captain or lieutenant, etc. So now actually you can have a Blade Guard unit
Mm.
with a captain in a transport, or you can
Mm.
have your Black Templar units, the Crusaders. No, not the Crusaders. The
Oh, Sword Brethren, I want to say.
Sword Brethren.
Yeah,
Yes,
nice.
with um,
With
you
a
can
character
have
or
a
something like that.
captain. Well, two characters now because they're a squad of fives or 10.
Ah,
So you can have a 5-man with two characters attached to it. So
yep.
a lieutenant plus Hellbreach, for example,
Mm.
and go and have
Go
that
bonk someone.
as. Yep,
Or
exactly.
get up the board and not die. This is a really
Yep,
cool change. Really
yep.
nice little
I
nuanced change.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely
So
makes
props
makes
to the
the makes the impulsors a very very nice tool again.
yeah. So props to the change on that one. It's really nice. I
Yep.
love targeted changes like this where it's not just
It's
whatever. It makes sense,
quality
right?
of life. Quality of life.
Yeah,
You
for
were
sure.
looking at your blade guards and like, I can't run them because they can't just run up the board. It
Yep. Yeah.
doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and it's kind of good because they didn't just make Blade Guard cheaper or they didn't give them a better
Yep.
save. They actually facilitated what they were, bad at, right? In
Yep.
terms of, they helped them get up the
Yep.
board, right? Which is exactly what they
Exactly.
needed. So it's awesome. The
Yep.
Repulsor, 14.
It's
Is there any targeted change in
um
that? Top of my head.
Gravis armor. So essentially now the repulsor cannot play the role of the Land Raider Redeemer.
Hmm.
So it gives again another alternative where your 6 aggressors and a biologist apothecary, for example, can
Oh
go in
yes.
something else than just a Land Raider Redeemer,
Yep.
or into a Crusader and have some empty space that has no
Yeah.
reason to be. So again, it's quite nice. It's an alternative. It brings back a unit that is solid,
Hmm.
and gives it an alternative purpose, for a unit that is quite good in
Mm.
certain builds. So the Gladius um, aggressor bomb is very deadly.
Yeah.
We all know
Probably
it.
back on the menu.
Yeah.
And aggressors you don't really want to play in the squad of three, do you? Because you want to like go in, nuke something, charge something, hopefully be able to combat, Overwatch someone, get the triple threat out of them.
Yep.
And it kind of swings away from the Land Raider play viability, which I think is a
Correct.
good thing. You know, how much fun
Yep.
have people had playing against Land Raiders? Not really that
Mm,
much.
no.
The Land Raider players usually having fun, though. I'll give them that. Blood Angels. So this is the old change.
Yep.
That's fine.
Same change. Nothing really.
Chaos Knights. This is a big one. Well, it's not big for everyone else, but it's big for Chaos Knights.
Yep.
Basically, they've implemented this rule across a couple of different units, as well as Tyranids. But basically, the big knights, guys, can move through terrain pieces 4 inches or lower for free. That's fine. Or they can just straight up move through any terrain, and on a
On a
D6, you
one.
roll a 1, you take battle shock. So basically, no
You are battle
penalty.
shock. Yeah. You are
Oh
battle shock.
no.
1 out of 6,
Yeah.
but actually you can move through the board,
Yeah.
which is
So
fantastic.
I mean, on UKTC, put your big knight in the Super L, move through the wall.
Yep.
Don't care at all. On WTC, you can pack them in the Super Ls and then move straight through them as well, which is pretty big because some of those Super Ls in WTC are on your deployment zone, and then you could just move straight through them into a staging area potentially as well.
Well,
So pretty awesome.
it's great because as well, if we look at it, it's the small Ls or the medium Ls, which are great staging points on the mid board, becomes the actual viable staging points for these big knights. So you can
Mm,
actually in 2 turns move in a straight line, but before you had to just walk around, etc. So you gain a lot of mobility, threat range, out of them, which is actually really nice. So they're not anymore sitting shooting platforms, but they are actually now also a threat in terms of combat.
yeah. So
Yeah.
this is another great way, I think, of making knights viable without the bit larger knights more viable without just dropping the points on them.
Yep.
They do get points drops, but it means that it's not a stat checky part of playing them, which is cool.
Yep.
Oh, warp talons.
Oh,
Not in the bin. They're still pretty good, I think.
it's still great.
So it basically, if this unit destroyed one or more enemy units this phase, it can bounce back up. So that means that your Warp Talon unit actually has to kill the unit. So you
You
can't
have
just
to do
triple
that.
gang on one thing, bounce them all back up. It's a good change, I think.
Yep.
I'm surprised they didn't change it more, actually, because we've seen abilities like this in the past be nerfed a lot. But I think at
Yeah.
the same time, Chaos Space Marines didn't really come in with the bang that we thought they were going to come in. albeit a lot of top players are practicing for WTC, so it's really difficult to get a true gauge on them at the moment, I think.
Yeah, I think there was in the last 2 weeks there's been a few, not that many big names with them,
Mm.
etc. But we saw, for example, Bristol was won by CSM
Yes. Yep.
without 30 warp talents, but I think there was still 10. I think
Mm.
it just make it less of a I need to have 30, but
Mm.
more about okay, 10 and 5 or maybe 10, 5, 5, and gives a bit more play around it rather than just I'm going to recycle these and I'm just going to do exactly the same and it's always going to be the same and it's boring.
Mm. And it means that you have to use it more strategically as well, right?
Yep,
Yeah, you
exactly.
got to take a targeted
Yep.
attack. And
And
to be fair, though, you can still fight with your other unit first, and then fight with these guys.
correct. And uh, what you can do as well is it doesn't box you in into using renegades because you
Mm.
have that strat to disengage yourself and therefore go back up in the sky.
Mm.
So it opens warp talents to be viable and great pieces as well in other detachments. So you
Mm.
have that stratagem that now is freed up for other purposes and other usage.
Mm. Yeah, nice. Yeah, it's cool. We see little change with demons.
I
Now,
think it's quite big changes actually.
oh yeah, yeah. Sorry. The shadow and the shadow of chaos army rule, has this actually changed a lot? Energy within
S-
6 inches of one or more.
So it
Uh, right. Okay. So I don't think you need to be within your shadow of chaos necessarily. You
correct.
could be next to one of your big guys, basically.
Yep. Yep.
So take a battle shock, blah blah blah. So that applies. I don't
So
think that's a huge change. I think that's more of a thematic one. But the
yep,
next change is that you don't have to play Be'lakor, which is awesome because
exactly.
your big boys can bring in their, Slaanesh, Tzeentch, Nurgle,
Yep,
or Khorne guys within 6 inches of themselves.
correct.
So you don't have to play Be'lakor. You can just fucking play a Bloodthirst,
Yeah,
mate.
and also from a role interactions, it creates more synergy as well within the codex,
Mm,
index, where stratagems rely on being in the shadow. So
mm,
most of the time being around Belacor. Now you don't
mm.
have to because you've got your big pieces. So the Great Unclean One has always a 4-up for no pain. Why? But that's one thing. He doesn't need to be in a shadow anymore. You
Mm.
can advance and charge with any and every of your big ones.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's a good point as well. Oh, of course, because they count as being within their own aura.
Yep.
Yeah, that's quite
Um,
nice actually.
or they can
Good
be
find.
used, yeah, or they can be used as a way to catapult your faster units with you deep strike fringes, you go into the center, and you've moved your other units, you advanced it, and then at that moment you can trigger the advance and charge because they will be in the advance and charge unit. So
Hmm.
it creates a lot more play and synergy with the different rules of the index, which is really good.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, which is really cool. Sorry guys, that was the demonic incursion detachment ability, not the demonic pact rule,
Yeah,
of course. Yeah, I think this is a great change for demons. I would love to see demons more higher at the top end as well. So I'm
yeah.
cool with that. I think it'd be really cool if you see a lot more of like, I'm playing Tzeentch and Khorne, or I'm playing like Slaanesh Khorne, right? Because you
Bit more
probably don't have enough
variety.
to split three.
Yeah,
But two is really cool, right?
yep. No, I think it's great.
Nice.
It's really
They've
nice.
just added the data sheet abilities on here as well.
Yep.
There we go. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Cool beans. Dark Angels, I think, is the same. Inner light detachment change.
Um, no, I think they did some changes there.
Okay. +1 OC on Grim Resolve. I'm going to assume is not fantastic. I've literally never played against anyone who plays Dark Angels as an
I,
actual Dark Angels
yeah,
army. It's always been how many Stormraven gunships do I have?
yeah. It used to be only Iron Storm and that's it. Just for the extra CP. I think it's not as a Grim Resolve. It's the Inner Circle that I think had the change.
Great.
With which I think gives them essentially a way to have two objectives where you get +1 to wounds. I think
Okay.
that's long story short. I think that's that. But
Long story short, if you actually know what you're talking about and you play Dark Angels, let us know
yeah,
in the comments below if you think it's a big change at all.
yeah,
Because, I mean,
but
it strikes me as playing more Terminators. If you think,
yeah, I think the bigger changes they actually gave the Deathwind Knights
yep,
and the Inner Circle Champions actual weapons. They can
yeah,
hurt people
they
now.
can hurt people now. Oh, they're not AP1 now. Yeah, great. Anti-monster, anti-vehicle, 622, 4 attacks apiece.
Oh, they got damage
So
too.
whoa. Um, I love how the power weapon is just damage 2 as well. But yeah, I would love to see Terminators back to damage 3 personally.
Yeah,
Um,
they're
they
they're
don't have to be
missing
minus 1 damage, but
yeah,
you know,
yeah. They don't necessarily need to be more tankier, but they need to be able to do more.
yeah.
At the moment,
A squad of Terminators should just rinse something. It gets into combat routine.
yeah, yeah.
Your opponent armor of contempt or whatever, and then you just go, oh, great.
Oh,
I mean,
so, yeah,
getting the anti-monster anti-vehicle is pretty big though. Obviously, being strength 6 means that you basically +1 to wound against them, which
yeah,
is nice.
yeah.
Nice, cool. Probably still not going to see many Dark Angels, sadly. But let us know if it makes a difference for you. Death Guard play company detachment is the same.
Yep,
The biologist is the same. Once again,
yep.
it would be great if this just wasn't in red. Death Watch is the same.
Yeah, no
Fantastic.
changes in
I
Deathwatch.
believe Drakari is the
Jukai
same.
is the same. Yep, they get the extra AP and Archon joining
Yep.
Incubi,
I think these
and
are the changes from last time for Grey Knights.
there is an extra change, but to keep in mind as well, the Archon,
Hmm.
if it's your Warlord, has the Vect ability, so he
Ooh,
can go in charge, and every unit that is around him within 12 inches now all the strats are +1 CP.
nice.
So that's actually very nice. So they get a buff by other rules and other means, which just make their Sky Splinter Assault even more interesting to play,
Yes,
which I
and
think
if
is really good.
you yeah, and if you don't know, the pivot rule introduction is a huge buff for Drakari, of course, as well.
Yep,
Mainly because your raider actually gains movement by pivoting in most scenarios. Awesome,
they
and it can go
forgot
through
their
any gap because
yeah
it's on a 60 mil flying base. So,
yeah
you know.
they forgot their geometry lessons again.
Grey Knights, I think, is mainly the
So
same.
there is one change which is Vortex of Doom,
Oh, cool. Uh,
which cannot
oh,
anymore
yes.
bypass Sloan up.
Yeah, so this is actually the same change with Doombolt as well. So actually,
Yep,
this is, I mean,
s-
it
it
doesn't happen
just
every game, but
streamlines the rules. You'll
yeah,
learn up, you'll learn up. Period.
yeah.
That's nice.
I think they could have just made these abilities an attack as well.
Range attack.
I
Or
think that would
yeah,
have been more cleaner, in my opinion. Psychic abilities that deal damage are attacks, something like that, for example. But anyway, it's the same result, so I
yep,
think that's kind of good. Obviously, that's a bit of a nerf to Thousand Suns as well. But it makes lone operatives still lone operatives against those army, which is
correct.
nice.
Yep,
Okay, Imperial Knights basically received this super heavy walker ability, much like
correct.
Chaos Knights.
Yeah, which
I'm not
is
gonna.
I think it's even better for them because
Yeah.
Chaos Knight had the strat to walk through walls.
Hmm.
Imperial Knight do not,
Yep.
and Imperial Knight plays a lot more bigger knights than Chaos Knight. So it's I think they're going to be the most impacted by it.
Yeah, definitely. Chaos Imperial Knights have the obviously Canis Rex is in there, which is
Yep,
actually pretty
it's
good. You
pretty
think
good.
about it. Actually, souping in Canis Rex is pretty good. That's
Hmm.
actually a very viable soup option now
Yep,
because he can just straight up move through walls. That's
yep,
for okay. I
and
actually
it, and
just
he's
clicked on that
good,
one.
and he has the 3 CP, well, -1 CP strat.
Yes, so heroically intervene with that bad boy.
Oh,
Got
oh,
him. Oh, heroic
for
with
0
your Canis
CP.
Rex.
Oof.
Got him. That's pretty awesome. Canis Rex, I think, being the big winner for this. I think you'll probably see him in an 8-man team lineup. Then there must be a way to fit him in. I
Yeah,
know Grey Knights actually used to play him, so
yeah, Grey
why not?
Knights. Yeah, Grey Knights have been running it.
You get to play on your Super L heavy board WTC. Move them through. Awesome.
Yeah,
Uh, Leagues of Votan. Obviously, they got. Let's just talk about the infiltrate change because
yeah,
it's. I think Games Workshop have actually missed the mark on this change because they've actually they haven't priced. So Leagues of Votan have now got a 10-man unit that infiltrates for 80 points. Now I
yeah.
think a 10-man unit that infiltrates for 80 points, almost
Is
most armies would play anyway. Like that's perfectly fine to play. Obviously, they get armor, contempt, void armor, whatever. But most importantly, it fills a role that the army didn't have, which kind of obviously held back the army, but it was certainly an identity for the army that doesn't have an infiltrate, right? So
yeah, and if we look at it, they had a lot of scout movements, so they were
yes,
able to stage themselves very aggressively, they go first, etc. But they were weaker to armies with infiltrates and
Yep.
infiltrate scouts, like spaceman scouts. But even with just infiltrates, your opponent then had a decision: am I going to sacrifice one unit
Mm-hmm.
to screen myself, defend myself, and probably give away the pinata for CPs for the Votan player, but
Mm-hmm.
actually prevent myself from that Alpha Strike,
Mm-hmm.
to not having that possible capability where it's an extra roll off that can create not necessarily a big feel bad moment, but puts the Votan into a more comfortable solution. And at 80 points, they might just run two,
Yeah. Why
just
would you not play two? Yeah.
screen the whole board. And
Yeah.
like, well,
Just
now I'm
just
just going to do whatever I want.
yeah. Just infiltrate on your side objective as well.
Yeah,
Sure. 80 points is too cheap,
it's very
and
cheap,
it's a
very
failure to
cheap.
understand that this unit is a
For
complete
for
premium.
10 man, which has such a footprint at 80 points, it's very
Yeah.
cheap.
You would
Very cheap.
automatically play a 5-man. It's not even a question.
Yeah, yeah,
You would probably
yeah.
play a 5-man at 110 points.
Uh, uh, I'd say for a Votan player, probably 90 points for 5 man would be absolutely fine.
Yeah,
No
yeah,
question asked. No
yeah.
question asked.
Yeah, it's much like the reinforcement thing, isn't it? Really, like it provides you with a capability that is kind of regardless of whether it's a 5 or a 10 man, right? Like
Mm,
being able to go on a board, block your opponent's scout, infiltrate, scout yourself, potentially go first.
yep,
Can be tough.
it's
Yeah.
massive. Yep.
Alrighty, on to the Hypercrypt Legion detachment. You can no longer use the 3-inch deep strike on the Catan. A
I
big
think that.
change, and I don't really know if it's deserved, to be honest.
Uh,
You know, I don't. I've never really heard a lot of people complaining about 3-inch deep strike in Catan. That's just me. I don't.
no,
I,
um,
if I'm, I've been hating on Necrons for a while now, but you
I
know,
think I think it's. I mean, whatever. I don't think anybody played it
yeah,
that much.
exactly. I think people just got better at playing against Catan in general,
Yep,
very quickly. Yeah.
yep.
So yeah, okay. Can't 3-inch deep strike your Catan.
Mm,
I think that
yeah,
probably
sure.
kills the Hypercrypt Legion in general. I'm not. I'm struggling to see them be very good outside the monolith type build. I think personally, with the new mission
Mm,
play, I guess maybe they've got a role there, but
well,
it's a pretty big nerf. This one, I think.
I
What
don't
do
know
you?
if it's a. I
It's
don't know.
tough.
I'm not sure. I think it. They didn't necessarily play it a lot, so I think it was an occasional play.
Yeah.
Um,
But you
I,
would sometimes,
yeah,
but you would play the Transcendent. You
yeah,
could 3-inch it. You would play like one of them, for example. It wouldn't be
yeah,
tabling your opponent, but it'd be scoring you consistent points, and they would have to play around that ability. Um,
correct.
so to
But
lose
I
that,
mean,
I think loses that threat for your army, which is quite tough.
yeah, but I think they were using it on other units to position
Mm,
themselves on the board that don't necessarily have depth strike natively, like the
yeah.
destroyers.
Mm,
So you could have one which has the character with a relic, that enhancement that gives them the dip strike, and then you can have a second squad that doesn't have it, and you can fringe dip strike it and have the other one, so you can actually threaten two flying lane at the same time on one
yeah.
turn. Um,
Yeah. That makes sense. I can see that.
yeah, so I
Yeah.
think it change a bit the way they play. Is it going to change the way the build there is for hypercrypts? We saw less and less the monolith being played for that.
Hmm.
I think it's going to be pretty much the same.
Yeah, I can't see it changing a lot.
No.
So okay, I mean Necrons have had their time in the sun, as far as I'm
Yeah,
concerned, as well. So
yeah, they can
that's
walk
how it
away.
is. Yeah, they can beat Belisarius Core for 3 years. No, no. The Destroyer cult's probably not the worst now, actually, if I'm being honest.
It's a very interesting one.
Yeah, it's not a bad melee detachment, that one. Now
No,
that
no,
Indrik
it's
is getting away as well,
yep,
probably some play
absolutely.
there.
Yeah,
All right, a Green Tide. Green Tide and Orcs in general are copping a bit of a nerf. You
yeah,
know, so Green Tide basically, you basically don't reroll ones anymore, which is pretty big. It used to be fives
huge.
rolling ones for most of your units. Now it's just straight up 5-up invuln.
Yep.
That's just one of the detachment nerfs. Uh,
I think the way to look at it, it's almost like a double nerf because they lost the reroll to ones. That as long as they are 10 or more models, they got 5-up invul, rerolling ones
mhm,
to just 5-up invul. And if they're less than 10, they go to
6-up.
6-up.
Yeah.
That's quite a massive change in their durability in their blobs. And that impacts as well the mechanobs, which really love that while rerolling ones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a great point. Actually, you can no longer play the Mega Knob reroll ones at all.
Yep,
And a big change to one of their most pretty
played
broken
strats.
stratagems.
Yep.
I don't know how this got through testing regardless. Like on turn 5, you get +5 to charge. Like, come on, guys, what are we doing here? It's now just +1 to charge, and you can
And
reroll a
reroll.
charge roll, which
Yep.
means that this is really critical. On turn 2, you can't roll a 7 from Deep Strike, which is it's a huge nerf. The
Seven
weird
with
boy was already
yeah, 7 with a CP reroll. I mean,
or you
it
could have the
can
weird
be.
boy that naturally rerolled anyway with the enhancement.
Yeah, true.
So you were hitting a 7 regardless, and then another reroll in another unit.
Yep.
The weird boy is already really really strong anyway. So that's the way they've chosen to nerf that. Okay, really good. I like to see that.
Mhm.
And then the stratagem, the 1, 2, 3, the 3 triple nerf, the triple
It
threat. You can no longer blood surge flat 6.
Yep.
It's D6 every time, which is
And
obviously
you reroll
significantly
it,
worse.
and you reroll it if you're more than 10 or more.
Yes, yeah, you reroll it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you're probably averaging
Sure.
4 or something like that. I mean, being able to not, I mean, it's the same change as Phantasm to some degree, right?
Yep.
You know, flat 6 is a whole lot better than, even flat 4 is better than D6 because
Yep.
the reliability is really what you want there.
Yep.
There we go. Mega Knobs, finally.
5 up Field of Pain.
But 5 up Field of Pain is a 4 up. Just a straight up nerf. They got points increases as well. I think
Yep.
this is good change for the game,
Yeah.
of course. But I think Bully Boys is probably the detachment you're playing if you're playing Orcs now. I don't think Greed Tide is really going to be.
Maybe Warhordes will still see some play because
Okay.
they have that enhancement and strat to increase the speed.
Mm-hmm.
So you compensate a bit with the fact that you can deep strike and have very reliable charges out of deep strike from the green side. You can play it in Warhorde. Warhorde has still a great damage output with sustain in combat. So maybe we'll see more Bully Boys and Warhordes depending on the overall points and everything.
When I
Out.
practiced Orcs, I found that outside of the Warg, the damage really drops off.
Yep.
And so
Absolutely.
having the double Warg is obviously the huge part for Bully Boys as well.
Yep.
Alrighty. Ironstorm, in the bin now. Thankfully,
Yes,
I don't know if it's
finally.
in the bin, but it's a huge nerf, which is good
I
because
think
this was these were dumb auras in my opinion.
there's several layers to it that makes the Black Templar Iron Storm unplayable. And well, it cannot be played as it used to be played.
Yeah. So the two changes, guys, are the lethal hit aura that used to be an aura, and the fall back and shoot and advance and charge aura are now just pick one unit off each of those. So you basically do you play the lethal hit one? Maybe you play. Well, it's tough to say because obviously with Mercy's weakness, it's still quite a strong thing. But losing the advance and charge and the fallback and charge is absolutely massive.
It's only fallback and shoot or advance and shoot. You couldn't charge, but that was amazing as a parking lot shooting army, where one of the key elements to try to bypass it is you tag it. It didn't matter. Now actually it does matter. And the other element is Mercy's weakness is 2 CP, thank God.
Right, exactly, yeah. And so also in addition to that, you have to specify it in your command phase with the unit that has the enhancement. So your opponent, if you're playing against it, you already know the vehicles that can target for their advance and shoot.
Correct.
So you just go now your vehicles are just guard vehicles that move 10 and just kind of as and shoot. So much more predictable.
Other changes that happen across the different Space Marine and sub-factions where notably when you were not using the sub-faction detachments such as the Black Templar, White Crusader, and so on, etc., you had access to every single datasheets, your specific datasheets plus the Space Marine datasheet. Now it's not the case anymore, so you lost access to quite a few datasheets for Black Templar. So they couldn't double up on. You can't double up on Reapers anymore. You can't have a Black Templar Reapers and the normal Reapers, I believe. So certain subfactions lost access to certain datasheets, which remove their ability to spam certain units.
And like you said, also, Mercy's weakness being 1 CP
goes to 2.
Is, that's a pretty big nerf. So I don't think we'll be seeing Ironstorm for a while now.
No.
Whoever's on the playtest team or whatever, obviously had a bit of a grudge against that. That is in the dustbin. Space Wolves changes. Come on. Anything here, or is this all
one key changes? One key. So we got a buff in the previous one with the saga actually being easier to trigger, which was turn and on battle round. Now actually you start the game with one of the saga active, The only caveat is you cannot start with the one that gives you +1 OC, but you can
Okay.
start straight up the game with my army has 6 up Feel No Pain, or lethal hits in combat, or sustain hits in combat, but
Cool.
also support other stratagems. So the 6 up Feel No Pain, for example, gives you a 4 up Feel No Pain against mortal wounds and psychic weapons.
That's pretty nice. So
That's
you can actually
interesting.
choose when to put that on.
Yep, exactly.
That's pretty good.
Start of a battle, you pick which one. So depending on your opponent, you might pick one or the other. So it gives quite a nice flexibility into the spaceful design space and the attachments. And actually, it has a rule now. You don't have to wait like midway through the game to have a rule.
Yeah. That's it's a little bit of a feels bad, isn't it?
Yep.
So a nice buff for Space Wolves. There are some points increases on them, but Space Wolves have obviously been doing well recently. But I think they've obviously been doing well inside a rather linear build space
Yep.
with the
So we'll
Thunderbolt
see a
Cavalry.
bit more. Yeah, we'll see
Yes,
a bit more.
nice, awesome. Moving right along, Thousand Suns, the best army in the game on WTC terrain. Saying it right here, is probably still the best army in the game on WTC terrain. We
Yeah.
see quite a lot of changes for Thousand Suns, but in my opinion, as someone who's playing Thousand Suns for WTC or practicing them a lot, I read these changes and then I saw the no points changes, and I thought, wow, I can't believe they got away with that much.
Yeah.
So, as a general rule, guys, you can only use one Cabal ritual on one unit, so you can't just have Magnus say I'm going to use 4 Cabal rituals on Magnus, which is good. It's kind of like the old Ninth Edition where each person would have a psychic power and you would cast
Yep.
it. Doombolt obviously doesn't do the lone operative thing anymore, so you can't Doombolt lone ops outside of
Yep.
12.
Yep.
Psychic Twist of Fate is no longer remove armor phase. It's armor save. It's
It's
just
extra AP. Yeah.
give +2 AP, which is not. It's not. It's well,
It
if you shoot a Lehman Russ, then for these models that were 2 up saves in cover,
well
then yeah, it's a big buff to those things.
exactly. So
Um,
even free up in cover with armor of content, for example, actually you can try to save yourself. So
yeah,
it's no more, hey, I point my finger at your unit and it's gone because it doesn't have an invul.
Yeah, a good change. I remember saying
Yep.
this. I remember saying this ability sucked to play against for a long time. So maybe you don't play Araman for that one-time Twist of Fate for free.
Yep.
Interesting to see. Temporal Surge. You cannot
Double it.
triple move something.
Yep.
Now, obviously, triple moving in some circumstances was strong, but I actually don't think that triple move, not being able to triple move, breaks your army at all. I mean,
No, I think
it
it
was
was
like it was like
occasional play.
yeah,
Magnus will move. What was it? 40.
16 plus 16 plus 16. Yeah,
Yeah, or like 14 plus d6 plus 14, 14.
yeah,
It
yeah.
ridiculous amount of movement, and then double doom bolt something or whatever.
Yeah. But with the new pivot rule, Magnus can arguably move even more. So honestly, this triple move was probably the best with
Yep.
cultists to move block your opponent's army.
Yep.
But all in all, guys, these are some pretty weak nerfs to an army that was
Correct.
very very strong. I've been having a ton of success playing this army. It's very very powerful. Magnus not copying a nerf, or I don't know, one of the strats not copying a nerf, or I don't know,
And
something else. The points increases I was expecting not
at
happening was
least,
pretty crazy.
for example, on the center base, such as Magnus, not necessarily a big one, but an increase in point there could
Yeah.
open. And now you ask yourself, should I play Magnus? Yes or no? At
Yep.
the moment, you don't even ask yourself
You
a
don't even
question.
ask.
You just play it.
Yeah, I mean, you could play him at 500 probably.
Yep.
He's that good. Now there is a change to one of the units, which does make Thousand Sons more vulnerable to these fast melee units armies, which is that the Exalted Sorcerer on disc, instead of the half advance and charge, it's now just subtract 2 from each, and
Yep.
it doesn't hit vehicles or monsters. This is quite a big change, and I don't think you'd probably play the Exalted Sorcerer now because you actually do have to shoot a unit and they become pinned. I don't know why they don't introduce pinned as a universal rule either.
Mm,
I feel like they should just
true.
do that.
True.
But it means that you can't temporal surge him, trigger the ability in the start of your shooting phase, and then temporal surge him back into safety. So you
Yep.
probably don't play the Exalted Sorcerer on disc anymore, but I
But
think that's
you
fine.
can do it indirectly.
Yeah, well, you can just shoot your opponent from indirect now. But
Yep.
Thousand
But
Suns,
so
like,
you don't have to expose himself. That's one thing.
yeah, that's true actually. But he does have a 18-inch gun, I suppose. It's
Yep.
18 or 12 on him. I can't
I
remember.
think it's 18.
Yeah.
So it's a it's a nerf, but it's a buff in another way. So I think it's
It's
fine.
definitely a nerf. The
Yeah,
halving the charge was
yeah.
absolutely
I mean,
brutal against some games.
halving movements in advance was just
Yeah.
brutal.
But reducing someone's charge range from you need to
Yep,
roll a 12 to move 6 is
yep,
was
yep.
just I mean it was a bit silly, right? So
Good.
yeah,
So
all of but when you think
less of a feel bad moment where you're like, oh, now my unit is just dead in
yeah,
the
you're
water.
like, well, I'm just 12 inches away from you and you can't charge
No.
me. It's like,
Yep.
okay, that doesn't really make sense, mate. But when you think about the other changes that Thousand Suns got, namely the free strat one is pretty big.
Yep.
That's no joke. Being able to free strat with 6 Cabal points is pretty big, and you can do it even if you don't have Forbidden Law. You can do that in the shooting phase and then and then the charge phase, for example, or whatever. Right?
Hmm.
It's pretty nice. Righty ho, Tyranids, because I've been playing a bit of Tyranids actually.
Oh.
Ooh, a long time Tyranid player, but I haven't touched him in 10th edition. Tyranid's got some big buffs, come on.
Yep.
These are some real winners. Okay, so if you're within Synapse range, you get +1 strength and melee, which is basically you get +1 to wound on most of the data sheets you're going to play.
Yep.
Because you're playing Gene Stealers and Hormogaunts and other units that are at the strength 7 breakpoint, like Maliceptors in combat for the sweep, for the most part, you're just getting +1 to wound here, which is pretty nice. And Synapse is pretty easy to get. So,
Yep.
a huge buff, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
We've then
I
got
agree.
Shadow in the Warp, which also compounds again. So, if you when you release Shadow in the Warp, which is the Battle Shock ability, if they're
Hmm.
within 6 inches of a Synapse unit, you subtract
Yep.
1 from the test additionally. So, if you've got
Yep.
the Neurolictor, which most people play, so not the Neurolictor, the Neurotyrant, they're -2 leadership on their units that are within Synapse range, but it's pretty straightforward to give a unit to play Synapse units into the important parts of the board where your opponent's going to be.
Yep.
So yeah, two huge buffs. I mean, Gene Stealers are a big winner out of this. I played them with +1 strength recently, and I mean, going from strength 4 to strength 5 is really big.
It it changed a lot because a lot of the units they want to hit are going to be toughness 4,
Hmm.
maybe toughness 5. So they go from being able to damage them okay to not to actually hurt them
Yep.
pretty badly.
Yeah, really good. Uh, this is a bit of a fun one. Crusher Stampede. Oh, mate, do love me some Crusher Stampede. um, +2 objective control on all their models. That's a pretty big buff.
If they are at their full starting term, so if they haven't taken any damages, they
Yeah,
get
yeah,
extra, which is really good.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think this is a pretty
nice.
big buff for the detachment, in my opinion.
Yeah,
+2 OC. They've got some cheaper monsters there, so maybe that's good.
yep,
And if they're damaged, then they get +1 to hit, and if they blow off, they get +1 to wound. So
yep.
not terrible. But they got a pretty big buff in this one, which is for 1 CP, you can basically walk through walls with one of your monsters. So you basically get Knights of Shade, more or less. But obviously, you got to take a battle shock test if you're
Yeah,
going through
the
a
same as
big
the
wall.
big, yeah, the same as the big knights.
Yep.
Don't roll a one.
Yes, exactly. So this is nice. I mean, I think this makes a lot of the other units a lot more viable. For example, a
Mhm.
flying hive tyrant can go through a wall 12 inches and doesn't have to go around it. So
Yeah,
that's pretty nice.
they play like ninth, almost.
All flyback. The Walkrant gets an aura of assault and lethal hits.
Yep,
I'm not sure how good that is because the Walkrant is still 235 points and a toughness 10 wound model. It's a pretty
I
underwhelming
think
model.
it's fine.
Yeah, it's
Sure,
fine. Yeah.
it's
I don't know if you play it, but yeah.
no,
Uh,
but yeah.
and then a bunch of stuff got Synapse, and the Neurotyrant, importantly, can join Zone Thropes, which is a nice buff as well. Everyone thought that he was going to be able to join Zone Thropes when he came out, but obviously they changed that, or didn't do on release. And actually now, I think you can shoot them in combat because Big Guns Never Tire is determined by the unit. So your Neurotyrant Clement is a monster, and that means that your Zone Thropes
Mm,
can then shoot in combat and out of combat. Not
interesting.
bad.
So it's not locked as the model for beginner
Yeah,
tires.
I'm pretty sure. Maybe someone can
Interesting.
clarify, but
Yep,
I'm pretty sure
interesting.
it talks about the unit.
That's actually quite nice because yeah, famously, how do you shut down that unit? Is just tag
Just
it.
tag them. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Morlock, Ravenous, and Trigons all gain the Vanguard Invader keyword. This is nice because it means you get advance and charge on one of these units.
Yep.
And then in addition, I think there's a thing where the Vanguard Invader can pick a unit back up. You can actually
Think
keep
so.
picking and upping and downing your Morlock or your
Yeah,
Dragon to deal
and
mortal wounds.
do all the mortal wounds. Yeah,
Maybe it's not bad, but
yeah,
yeah, a good change. I mean, Tyranids receiving a really big buff. I think the Synapse 1+1 strength is probably the
yeah,
biggest part of that. And also the Synapse -1 on the Battle Shock is really big as well.
yeah.
Very nice. That kind of concludes all of the changes. Maybe there's some World Eaters changes. I don't know if there are.
I don't think so.
Don't
Maybe
think so.
the Demon Prince aura changed, but I'm not even sure.
Okay. Well, World Eaters, I think, are looking pretty fine anyway.
Yeah,
There are some core rule changes. Let's just go through the big ones. What is the
yeah.
biggest one? What do you think it is?
Um, there was a lot of clarification and cleanup, which was really nice. I
Yep.
think what I really like, so outside of a pivot that we already touched upon a bit, which cleans up a lot the movement of vehicles,
Yep.
the changes in certain strats, I think, are going to change a lot the variability or the playstyle of certain units.
Yep.
So we spoke about Heroic Interventions,
Yep.
which goes to 1, but it's great.
Tank
Grenades.
Shock also.
Grenade and Tank Shock have been changed. Both of them, I think, are quite nice. So Grenade is cleaned up. You can't advance or fall back and grenades.
Yep.
They also cleaned up a very hedge case where your grenade model is within nades, but the model that see the guy, the target, is outside of 12, for example. So you could dodge Overwatch by like stringing, hiding a model, etc. So that is not possible anymore. So quite nice. No more breaches, tower breaches, moving at 12 inches, grenading you and then shooting you. God, I hate that.
Yeah, I hate that too.
So
And then Heroic Intervention is obviously a huge change.
yeah,
Going from 2 to 1 means that it's so much easier to keep up.
yep.
Heroic plus rapid. I find the big one is rapid ingress and heroic,
As yep.
especially
With
with a
a
strike unit. Oh,
with a deep strike unit,
so
but now
good.
you can actually rapid ingress with deep strike. They fixed it.
Yeah, officially now.
No, absolutely.
Yeah,
And if
then
you have a fight first, for example, within that unit, it can deal a lot of damage and shut down completely a side of a board.
for sure. So, big changes to the game. Like I think you mentioned about as well, Clement, there's been a lot of rules cleanup and changes. How long is this
Yep.
document now? I'm just curious. This document's got to be like 30
33,
pages something.
33 pages.
33 pages. There we go.
Yep.
Love it. I mean, it's obviously good for the game. I would love it if they unredded a bunch of this stuff, so we kind of knew exactly what changed, of course. But the one that I think is going to impact the game the most is, of course, the indirect fire nerf.
True.
This is a huge game changer, in my opinion. Not only is this clearly, as we talked about before, there's overarching changes for the game. Some armies are affected more by them than others, but I think this is the one that clearly hits guards smack bang in the face the most, right?
Yep.
You're talking about an army whose faction identity to a large degree is indirect fire, potentially hitting on 2s, rolling 1s, oftentimes hitting on 3s, basically being locked at hitting on 4s.
Yeah. Another faction that is being hit by it, maybe a bit more indirectly. Great pun. Dark Reapers.
Yeah, Dark Reapers. So they always used to hit on 3s as well, right?
Yep. Now they can't.
Always hit on 4s. Did they get a data sheet change? I don't know.
No, they got a point increase. So a small
yeah.
point increase as well. So it's like kind of like double nerf on them, which makes them quite questionable in terms of do you really want to still play them? An Exarch hitting on 4s with just 1 reroll to hit with strength 4 AP 1 damage gun
great.
is starting to be very questionable.
Yeah. Although the Night Spinner maybe is a bit more viable. But D Cannon's obviously got hit as well there, where they can hit on 3s as well.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a big nerf, man. This is a big change to the game. I feel like they've just wanted to make this change for a while, but
good, yeah. I like it. I think mass indirects that is very valuable to hit is not good. Says the person that plays 2 whirlwinds in permanent all the time.
Although whirlwinds, unironically, with Oath of Moments, nerfed the least out of all this.
I mean, they hit on 4s anyway all the time. I don't understand.
Yeah, it's a big change for the game.
Yep.
We'll see how it pans out. I think for the most part, players are going to be happy with
Yeah.
this change. I think obviously if you're on the receiving end of it, it's a bit of a tough
Yeah.
blow. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased because there are game wide changes in here that have hit guard. Obviously,
Mm.
this is the two main axes which guard were able to compete were having an indirect base and the ability to respawn. Both of those are more or less gutted, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think you'd play. It's very tough to justify much indirect now. Maybe the Earthshaker cannon because it's going to hit on fours regardless.
Yep.
So maybe then the Manticore does re-roll, but it only re-rolls against targets 5 or greater. So it depends what your opponent is playing.
Yeah,
What?
and the good thing is they did not just gut in them from that aspect. They gave them some different rules from their faction. So
Yep.
there's a bit of a trade there. So there's a need to look back again at what is actually good for guards.
Hmm.
What was used to be played now is not good anymore, not viable anymore. It's not about cutting a couple of units and doing some minor tweaks and swaps. It's
Hmm.
actually re-looking at what is a good guard list. It becomes
Yes.
a whole new question to solve.
Yeah, you tell me. I don't know. There's
Oh, I
not a
don't
lot
know.
that's crazy,
I don't know.
man. I'm at officially looking to abandon this faction. If I'm being honest. It's pretty rough. Let's just go through some of the changes now. Let's
Yep.
just touch on the big ones here. I think
Yep.
sisters are pointed very high.
Yep.
Some of the big ones here: Repentia Squad coming in at 90
Repentia.
points.
Yeah.
I
The
mean,
Triumph as well. Got it.
yes, the Triumph. I would almost say the Triumph is probably accurately pointed
Yep.
because the Auto 6 is really big, but Repentia, I mean, 180 points for 10. I mean, like,
Yeah,
that's a lot, man.
but they can go what 28 inches with not rolling any
Yeah,
dice.
it's true, but oh, man. Oh,
So
it's
yeah.
expensive, though. Oh,
Yeah.
Paragon Warsuits
If
went up. What is Arcoflagellants? Arcoflagellants.
Arcos are what 150 for 10, I
Somehow
believe.
they went down. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they
Okay,
went slightly down because in um, three of the detachments they're not as resilient,
that's
kind
true,
of.
yeah, and they did
I
receive
mean,
an overall nerf, I suppose. But if
kind
you
of a,
look at
I would say it's a side resilience profile because they gain a 6 up involved, but they lost a pip
yeah,
of Thinner Bane. So
yep, exactly, yeah. But a bunch of the core units, like I mean, Zephyrim went up 50%.
mhm.
That's Seraphim went up, 15 points on
Yeah.
top of this. Oof.
Retributors went up 20 points.
Yep. I mean, everything went up a lot, which I think puts the usual list around. I think it's like 1650 or something like that. So it's about a 300 points haircut, which I think
Yeah,
is. I don't know if it's. I think it's a little bit too much, maybe. But sisters at the
maybe.
current points would have been
Yeah, uh,
absolutely bonkers.
yeah,
So
yeah. So
um,
it was needed. Is it a bit too much? I think that's a question we'll need to see. I don't think the faction is bad and far from it. I think it will be
no.
in the hand of a very good player. It will be fantastic, but it
Hmm.
comes to a more elite um, kind of army rather than just a horde of bodies that are very annoying to shift.
Yep, for sure. Then we've got AdMech, so like we talked about, becoming a
Yep,
little bit more elite,
yep,
which is, I think, a good thing for their army as a whole. Iron Stripe Ballistari do go up from 50 to 70, although they do dodge to bring it down as well, right? So, notable there.
yep,
And they do get arguably double-ish the output as well. So, it's still a buff, I think, despite the points increases there.
yep. No, and they can have a 5 up in Urbane, so they can be quite annoying to shift. You
Yep.
contact them, they have innately fallback and shoot,
Hmm.
and they revolve their desperate breakout. So they are very nimble and yeah, good shooting
Nice.
platform.
Still got my 9 chickens or whatever it was from beginning of 9th edition.
Yeah,
Aldari got some really interesting changes, which I thought that I was
yeah,
hoping that they would get changed, make some of these changes earlier, which was make some of these characters that are so cool cheaper.
yeah. So
uh,
yeah, so some of the characters went down, which is fantastic.
mhm.
Love it. But
But I mean, a lot of the cool stuff also went up. But let's go through the
yeah,
characters first. There's 4 characters that went down: Jane Zai, Karandras, Morgan Ra, and Azraman. Come on, what is your top one that you would play if you had to pick one?
probably as a man. I
Probably right. He's pretty good, man. He's got a
he's
2 up,
pretty
3
good.
up.
Yeah, I mean,
It's pretty good,
is
man.
he's still a T3 body.
Yeah, but man, he does crank. He's got like 6 shots and 6 attacks at
Yeah,
like
and
633.
he let you Overwatch for free.
Exactly. With
So,
he joins
so
Dire Avengers, which
yeah.
didn't
So I
go
think
up. So
it makes that package actually more viable.
yeah,
I played against it at Bristol. It did not impress me at all, but it was more expensive. Now it's a bit cheaper with the strats and so on, etc. I think it becomes absolutely good,
yeah.
viable. Yeah.
There we go. But some of the key offenders have been increased in
Even yeah,
points.
even
Yvain
one
receiving the 25er, I
five.
think now.
It's very steep. It's
Yeah,
very steep.
that's a 25% increase.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Warp
Um,
Spiders going up again at 10 points, and Skyweavers going up 10 points. Why Skyweavers? They did nothing wrong.
yeah, and Shadow Spectre's going up. Skyweavers
Yeah,
were quite strong though. I mean, I know they didn't get played a lot on WTC, but on UKTC, the Haywire was on. Sorry, the other way around. Didn't get played a lot on UKTC, but on
see,
WTC, the
it's
Haywire
WTC.
cannon was very popular.
It's
Um,
good, but it's very unreliable.
yeah, it can reliably kill a Rhino or
Yeah,
something or
but I mean,
other.
it's
Or
95 points killing 75 points.
yeah, that's from safety though.
Mm,
But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, I take your point. That does
it,
seem a bit like someone had a little bit of a
yeah,
grudge against that.
yeah.
Hawks, I think, receiving. I think it's
Another
fair.
5 points. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think the Orcs, Reapers, Fire Dragon, I don't have any problems. Warp Spiders, so and so. I think at 125 you'll still see them.
yep.
Even was a bit steep. I think that
Yes.
would be
Yeah.
my main thing.
Also, Scourges also went up as well,
Yes, but the
which is
5-man squad and not the 10-man, which is I like that idea.
interesting. So the 10 man's
Yeah,
the same. Okay, so it means that you can't. Well, okay, yeah, that's an interesting change actually. So you can have one big fire and fade unit maybe, which given the indirect changes is probably still
yep.
good. Nice. Agents of the Imperium. All right, let's see what buffs Astra Militarum got. Armored Sentinels. Probably not playing those. Those are pretty bad guys. The Basilisk going back down
Yep.
for receiving the -2 to
Yeah.
hit penalty. Okay. The Death Strike finally.
Will you play one?
Mate, at least it doesn't hit on fours. It automatically hits.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, obviously the Death Strike is terrible. I don't know. They should just knock 50 points off it, and see if people
They
play
should, you should be allowed to play one for 0 points.
it. Yeah, just for the fun.
Yeah.
There should be a detachment where you get a free Death Strike. Yeah, man, that unit is bad. Field Ordnance Battery going down 10. This is maybe one of the options you're going to play for the indirect now because it would hit
Yeah.
on fours regardless and sustain. These are huge models though, so they're actually really, really hard to hide. So you can't
Mm.
really spam them. Interesting change. Kassakin,
Kazakurin going down slightly, which is, I think,
yeah, but now that you can't respawn them, I
yeah,
for
I think
me,
a
yeah.
100, I would have put them back at 100.
I don't even know if I'd play them at 100 though with one respawn. I'm be 100% honest. 80 I would play 30, but
Mm.
90 I would be really on the edge. 100 that's a little bit steep. So many times that these guys have just done absolutely nothing for me. You know,
Yeah,
it's a tough one. Manticore going down the
getting
most
down.
for the indirect packages. The
Yeah.
one thing that gets around the reroll to hit by rerolling naturally is the one they decrease the most. Yep, sure.
Why? Why?
That's
It
not
was,
interesting.
it was fine where it was.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, your list so obviously becomes 3 manticores, doesn't
I know.
it? Beats me,
Why?
man. I don't know, man.
Why?
Like, if you're going to build a list, you'd probably just play 3 manticores straight up now and hope that your opponent is rolling squads of 5, which maybe they are.
And a question becomes, if you're spotted by a scat sentinel.
No, yeah. So I've already looked this up. I thought they
Okay.
would mess this up, but the scout sentinel,
It's
the
only the
scout.
-1 to hit, right?
Exactly. It's only the hit penalty, whereas the indirect penalty doesn't get covered
It,
by that.
yeah,
So
because
unfortunately, the
it's
Scout Sentinel can't make you hit on twos.
yeah.
Yes, unfortunately. The Rogue Dawn going down 20 is, I think, a great change.
Mhm.
This is a very boring data sheet, but it's a great model as a
Yeah,
centerpiece for the army. And I think 240 actually is a lot more competitive for it. I
yeah,
think on WTC, though, you're like the staging areas are so close for it. It's kind of tough to see it. But 240, I think, is a very good argument between the Rogue Dawn and the Tank Commander. All of a
sure.
sudden,
Yeah,
points are really close
yeah,
there. Yeah,
I agree.
nothing else really changed. All in all,
No.
very big nerfs. I think
Yep.
they're already a pretty struggling faction on the stats wise, but yeah. Black Templars, the Reaper and the Valiant went up 10 points each,
Yep.
along with the Ironstorm nerf. So,
Yep.
you know,
And the normal variants as well in Space Marine went up. And
Yep.
one thing we didn't touch upon is the sniper and the impulsor combo doesn't work anymore as well. So quite a lot of nerfs on the Ironstorm builds where all of that is being stopped. So
quadruple nerf.
mhm.
A faction that I'm struggling to believe did not receive nerfs.
Yeah,
Blood
I
Angels.
think they're making it out like bandits. And
Yeah, this was one of the strongest armies in the game. Definitely up there. If I had to make an 8-man roster for teams, I would start with
Blood
Blood
Angel.
Angels and Thousand Suns.
Yeah.
So the fact that this did not get changes is absolutely wild to me.
Yeah.
There's probably an argument for some of it getting better with the strats and the heroics and everything.
Yep. Yep.
Um, Absolutely crazy.
Yeah,
This
heroic
army is
1
super strong as
CP and
well.
then fight on death for 1 CP.
Yeah, I mean, it was widely known that this was the strongest Marine build out there as well. So, yeah, I mean, this has got to be a bit of a miss. I think this with Thousand Suns were definitely the misses for sure, because
Yep.
they're quite clearly the two strongest armies in the game at the top end, I think.
Agreed.
Yeah, so kind of crazy. Demons,
Mm,
Battlecore going down 25, but you're
yeah.
probably not playing him anymore though. But
No,
Bloodthirster
I
going
think
down
it's
15.
it's I think it's mostly the big ones going down, and is it Finns as well?
Fiends went down as
Yeah.
well. Oh,
Yep.
interesting. Wow, that's a bit of a stat cheeky unit. I'm surprised they put that down. Demonids going down 10, actually.
Oh yeah.
That's interesting.
Nice.
10% drop on Demonids is pretty good. Plague Drones going down. No one really played those. Skull Cannon. I still love it, mate. One of the coolest models.
Soul Grinder going down.
Yeah.
Sure.
But, okay, so Demonids and the Bloodthirster, the big winners out of that one.
Yep.
I would say. These Demon Princes are so expensive, eh? I don't know why anyone thinks
Yeah.
they're playable at 200 points. So it's pretty
I don't know.
strange.
I don't know.
Chaos Knights, some of the big knights going down
Yep.
15 points per.
Yep, and the same thing for Imperial Knights, mirroring it.
Chaos Space Marines, some of the big changes here. I'm going to look for the
So
W keyword.
Warp Talent's
Straight to
going
a
up.
bomb.
Yep, 25.
Yeah, that's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, actually. 110 to
I
135.
think you'll see 10, 15.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Definitely. That makes sense to me. Vindicator going up 10 is a big one.
Yep.
Annihilator and Destructor,
And
some of these spammy hulls going up
Yep.
10 per. Okay, interesting. That's a bit of a nerf for Chaos. Well, obviously more than a bit of a nerf for Chaos Space Marines all in all. We've got Dark Angels, Death Guard here. Death Guard receiving a couple of points changes.
It's
Some of
pretty.
the less played units.
More or less a wash, I would say.
Yeah, it's a bit of a wash, is it?
Yeah.
Biologist Putrefy. Some of the characters going up a little bit. 10 per.
So Death Guard is still in a very good place.
Boom!
Overall.
Fucking Death Watch changes, mate. Hell yeah, dude. Proteus Kill Team is still an absolute steal at 180 points for 5 models.
I know. It's fantastic.
Or Kill Team
You will,
yes.
Yeah, you will see a lot of Death Watch veterans then.
To be fair, at least they did put the one unit down that you're supposed to play. I would love to see the Corvus Blackstar draw though. Yeah. To be fair, the Watchmaster was played, and the Watch Captain Artemis. These are actually playable units, but the faction stratagems have still been absolutely gutted though, unfortunately.
Yep. Yeah, maybe you play them as Gladius or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, probably right. It's sadly the best way to play them, probably.
Yep.
Drakari, Ravager going down 5 is always nice. Grotesque going down 10.
Going down 10. Yep.
Yeah, that's nice. Scourge is going up. So it's probably a bit of a wash overall, because you still play the Scourgers, obviously, if you're playing Drakari.
Yeah.
GSC, absolutely. I'm not going to pretend to know what all of these changes are, but I did see Aberrants going down.
30. Yeah, so they go down. Did they went down enough because they got their data sheets being nerfed as well? Like they lost strength, they lost damage, they lost resilience, but they lost points. So we'll see.
Probably a 16% drop. Oh, sorry, excuse me. Probably a nerf overall then. It's getting late here. Grey Knights, the typical Grey Knight change where they just put 10 points on basically everything. And, the Redeemer going up 25.
Which is a nerf applied across all the Marines factions accessing it, which is good.
Ooh, interesting enough, they didn't put Canis Rex down, of course, which is good because that would have been way too strong. The Knight Paladin, though, 405. Or if, maybe that's a swooping option, but I guess Canis Rex is still substantially better, though.
Great. You start with Canis Rex and then you go from there.
Yeah, I'm more excited about him for a swooping option. I feel like that's a real, real nice one, actually. with the
Yep.
walkthrough balls now. Leagues of Votan, no changes, which I
No
think is
changes.
definitely a win for them.
Yep. Yep. I
They're
think
definitely the winner out of the slate for sure, in
they
my opinion.
were in a good position.
Yep.
And I think now they've maybe a bit less predators and challenges, and they've got now that infiltration
Yes.
option. So yeah, I think
Then we've got. Ooh, sorry about that. Then we've got
mm,
finally the
Necrons.
Wraith nerf.
Yep.
Wraiths went up a bit, and Doomstalk went up a bit.
Yep.
I actually think with the new mission pack, Canoptic Core
I
got hit
think.
quite hard.
Yep.
So
So I think it's
Necrons, I
fine.
think, are very
We
much a mid-tier faction now, I would say.
we'll
And
see maybe more the is it Annihilation Legion?
Annihilation Legion, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is
Yep.
quite interesting to play. James Marsden is already on it
Mm-hmm.
before
Flayed
it.
Ones, not
So
Destroyers.
yep, exactly.
Yep, nice. Orcs, the big one here is Meganobs going from 60 to 80 for two.
Yep.
Oh, my
And
word.
then
Pain Boss and
Paintboy
Pain Boy, I suppose, going up as
going
well.
up. Yep.
Boys,
Which is
the same. So that's the design space there.
Snickrot going up.
Oh, Snickrot. Oh, the sneaky Snickrot nerf.
Yep.
Weird
And
Boy
Weird
going
Boy.
up as well. So
Yep.
all builds taking a nerf there.
Yep.
The generic Space Marines,
So it's
Reaper and
pretty
Valiant.
much yep. It's the Valiants, Land Raiders, and that's it.
Yeah, Stormraven
Stormraven.
Gunship.
Yeah,
Taking the old
sure.
20.
Yep.
Yeah. Paying for its crimes. Space Wolves, Thunderwolf
Um,
Cav going up only
and
10.
and Wolfens. Yeah. Um.
Not the worst.
No, I think they're fine. The mission changes probably hit more that Stormlands formation,
Yep.
which relies a lot on OC0, etc. I don't think you'll see Wolfen anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Um,
They were a very, very super viable unit before, though, right?
yeah, I think they were interesting. I never really liked the OC0 on an aggressive unit for combat because you wanted to capture the objective.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I never really got around to play them. But I was more onto a different builds than everyone else. So
For sure.
yeah,
Nice. Then we've got the Tau Empire actually receiving a pretty substantial buff. I think the
yep,
Retaliation Cadre list goes down about 150, 160 points.
yep,
Uh, nice. I
and
think that's
and
a good design choice. Hammerhead, which was
going
you
up,
played three
which is
of.
the offenders. Yeah,
Yeah, you played three Hammerheads. I mean, what are
yep,
we doing here?
yep,
So yeah, interesting. More design build space. I think Tower pretty strong at the moment. Actually,
yep.
definitely a playable build. And then Thousand Suns getting points drops. Huh. The Mutila's
Vortex,
Vortex
Vortex
Beast, which
Peaks.
was already completely playable and competitive,
Yeah, and
points
I
drop.
think you will see more of them being played.
Yeah.
So because
No
now,
shit.
well, it now you have to expose more your assets because
Yeah,
only
yeah.
one cabal per sorcerer.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you play with a Vortex Peaks now to actually do your cabal from 36 inches away.
Yeah, and I think just Vortex Beasts in general are just they're just a fine data sheet.
Yeah,
You know,
it's a
they're a
stat
solid
checky.
static unit, stat
Yeah.
checky unit. So I'm really surprised the disc on the sorcerer on disc went down, of course, as well because of the nerf. I'm very surprised they put that down. That just seems super odd to me.
Yep.
Really bizarre change in my opinion.
Yeah.
Completely unneeded. Tyranids, Biovores, Spores, and the Turvigon went down. No huge surprises there. The Spores, obviously, and the Biovore
Mm.
got hit by the mission play. Neurolictor went up 10. Ripper Swarms went up
Reapers on.
5. I'm kind of unsure
Sure.
as to why Rippers went up, but I guess
No
it's
idea.
a 20-point unit. I mean,
Yep.
maybe they thought with the new missions that that was going to be too strong or something, but
Yep.
it's OC0, so
Maybe
I mean, you can still
for
do.
engage in behind plays, for
Yeah, yeah.
example.
And the what's that one we need to be within 9 inches of a board edge? The super easy one to do.
But it's an
Um,
action, isn't it?
oh
Can't do
yeah,
the
you can't do
action.
that. You're right. Yeah.
I think it's more
Oh yeah.
engage behind because engage is now very, very easy. So you
Yeah,
can
of
actually
course.
do the three sides with
Mhm.
commenting 20 points units is
Yep.
actually a bit too much.
Yeah, for sure. It's a good point out. Yeah, and there we go. There are some changes. Obviously, there's like core rules and everything on top of that as well. Clement, who do you think are the biggest winners? Where do you think? Where do you think it stands? Who do you think will hit the hardest?
I think one of the key winners, and we mentioned it, is definitely Thousand Sons and Blood Angels are for me the two key ones that are making out of it in a very positive manners,
Mm-hmm.
either because they got no changes
Mm-hmm.
or they had very minor tweaks to their rules and can just play around it very easily.
Yep.
Biggest loser, that's an interesting one. I think actually basic Space Marines.
Basic Space Marines. Oh,
Yeah,
because of the Iron Storm nerf. Well, but they were hitting
yeah,
the Blood Angels though.
Yeah, so when I say basic Space Marine is if you ignore Black Templar, Space Wolf,
Mm-hmm.
Blood Angel, etc. If you want to play Ultramarine and so on, etc.,
Mm.
I don't think you gain an awful lot. I don't think they're massive losers, but I don't think they're in a great position either. A bit
Yeah,
in
basic
a weird
Space Marines
space. They're
have
in a
been
weird
struggling.
space. Yeah, they're in a
They've
weird
been
space.
struggling. Yeah, I personally am not a fan of the way they did Space Marines this edition. I
Mm,
don't like the mix and match. Playing Blood
yeah,
Angels, Black Timber. You know what I mean? Stuff like
it
that. It feels weird to me, but
it's weird and it's frustrating because up to now, if for example Space Wolf, if you lock their core detachments to pure Space Marine, you can't have like a faction unit, etc. Space Wolf
yeah,
is not playable.
yeah,
Now they may have an option, but even then, like I don't think anybody will really take the Rust detachments
yep,
seriously. You will
yep,
do fine, but is it as good as a Gladius or Stormlands? No.
yeah, yeah. Makes sense. Look, for me, the biggest winners, I think it has to be said. I think Blood Angels have got to be the biggest winner. I mean,
Mm,
literally no changes. Is very strange to me. Votan are definitely a winner. I think no change with them and their U unit is pretty nice in terms of. I
yeah,
don't know. I don't think they're the best, but I think they're
no,
definitely a winner.
great winner. Yeah.
And then Thousand Suns, I think, are up there as
Mm,
well. Definitely getting off two scot free. I think for me.
mm.
And then I think in terms of nerf, I think Necrons have received quite a big nerf. Orcs have been nerfed a lot as well. And then I think
Eldars, I would say.
Eldar are nerfed, yeah, for sure, but they got a big buff from the mission play. You could argue.
Yeah,
And then I think
they
it's
probably lost like one or two units on the board.
yeah,
Um,
true, yeah. I
I don't know. Yeah.
it's difficult to me to see guard functioning as any type of list as it currently stands.
Mm.
That's not outside of three manticores. Um, so it totally depends on the meta for that one. Losing the reinforcement strat is
It's a
massive. The
big,
fields of
yeah,
fire,
yeah,
is massive as well. So
yeah,
basically, you have to pay one CP to fields of fire, of course, which is really big. Um, so tough break for them,
yeah.
man. I will not be looking at that faction, unfortunately. No, I
But
know
you
the
don't
choice of
have
time.
to spend two CP every turn now
Oh
anymore.
man, yeah.
See?
Just I really do want to actually spin that. Well, I think orcs potentially big.
Yeah,
Sisters have got nerfed a lot as well when you think about obviously, but that's kind of like not really nerfed because we were expecting them to go down.
yeah, yeah. They just got a new book, so it's not really enough.
Yeah, there we
Yeah,
go. That's all the changes. Well, come on, it's been great having you on. You came
yeah.
on for an
Thank you.
absolute banger. So thank you
Yeah,
for coming on, and we'll get a game in person sometimes.
absolutely, with pleasure, David.
There we go. There you go, guys. I think it's episode 57. Hope you guys enjoyed the stuff, and we'll see you around next time. See ya.
Bye.